Welcome to Lewis on the Law.
You are listening to Lewis on the Law, and we're going to get into that a little bit. And it's not going to be the first thing, but one of the options here in the end game is once you've consolidated all the interest and you've divested all the interest that's required, you can go ahead and file a quiet title action. And a quiet title action basically allows basically says, all comers, and it's a quiet title against the world is the action that you would actually have to file. And the legal term is quia timid, and there's just a quia timid action, and then there's a quia timid against all the world. And basically what you're going to have to do, because even though you're going to identify 100 plus heirs, there's going to be 5 or 6 that you're just not going to be able to find. You're not going to be able to identify. So you're going to have to post notices in a specific way, especially in Georgia. Georgia has a statute that actually governs how you'll have to notify people or how you'll have to post notice. And you'll have to pick a court date, and you'll have to invite all claimants to come in and make their claim in court.
Well, we definitely appreciate how you've been helping us to navigate this new course for us. This is also a very helpful resource.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the Georgia Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, and that is the Partitioning Act is and a lot of times you're going to want to file the quiet title action and the partition action at the same time. A lot of people are afraid of the partition action because they're afraid that an outside party can come in and buy the property once you put it up for partition sale. But in Georgia, the Georgia Act has provided a protection for that. It basically allows all the tenants, co-tenants, to buy the interest out in other tenants. So the buyout option, the courts will notify the tenants, and they'll have 60 days in which to buy out the plaintiffs. And so the Georgia option will give a 45-day notice period and a 45-day notice period in which you can exercise that buyout option. Okay, so the courts will make a decision on the value of the property. There's going to be a really deep. There's a process here that the Georgia statute's already outlined. It's basically the courts will have to get impartial appraisers. The appraisers are going to have to appraise the property, and after the property has a fair market value, the courts are going to issue out a notice. And you're going to have 45 days in which you have to tell the court that I am going to go ahead and exercise this option to buy out the other interest in the properties. So in fundraising, it's really important that you have this end game in mind because it's really important that before you take the final steps in an heirs property issue, you want to understand how the partition action works. So you'll have 45 days in which to go ahead and exercise the option. And then after that, you'll have 60 days to go ahead and buy out your co-tenants. And the good thing about this is in Georgia, before the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, you had to be a tenant in common to force a partition action. And before the Heirs Property Act, people would own property as heirs property, but they're like, how am I even an owner? How do I have any rights to do anything? And so Georgia defined owners of heirs property as tenants in common. And so you guys already have standing to bring a partition action, believe it or not. So
that'll be a last resort.
It should be a last.
Yes.
Don't take this step without making sure that you've gone through all the other steps. And you don't want to do a partition action yet.
No, we'll do it the right way, the family way, the Hicks way.
Yeah, exactly. And so their website, you'll be able to donate on their website, and contrary to what was said, not all of it's going to attorney's fees. Most of it will actually be put in place to go ahead and clear title to this property, which might take some buying out of other people's interest who have been identified, and that is the last resort, because in that situation, you haven't divested them of their interest. They still have some interest in the property. They still don't want to turn it over to you. You still want to clear title to the property. So you force a partition action on the property. and they will have to go ahead and turn that over to you. So we're getting close to the end of our time, but not quite. So did you guys want to talk a little bit more about the Charles and Polly Ann Hicks Preserve? Is there anything else you want to say about it?
Well, I guess we might want to talk about some of our future plans for this,
Oh,
because
excellent.
this is a historic site that we're trying to obviously get identified as a historic landmark. But we also want to maybe use it because Georgia, as those of you who are listeners in this area, it's a beautiful area. We're here in Georgia in the springtime, and it's fabulous. And so we want to use that property as a nature preserve, if you will.
Because I've only given you not even half the information. We've only gone through half of this outline, and that was only going to give you a quarter of the information necessary to actually clear title to a convoluted process like heirs property. So once again, give them some contact information for you guys.
Sure, that's www.thehickspreserve.org. That's www.thehickspreserve.org.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. This show went by really fast. I didn't get to half the things that I wanted to talk about, but that's the way it is when you're having fun. Who knew that the law could be fun, interesting, and exciting?
Thank you for that.
I know. You didn't know that, did you?
I did not.
Yeah.
Never has in the past.
I know, right? People are like, lawyers are old, staid, and boring, and it's fun, exciting, interesting, and impactful.
And we've enjoyed sharing this story. We absolutely want the world to know about the story of my great-grandparents, Charles and Polly Ann Hicks.
Thanks. Yeah. And so I would like to thank Tom Jones, Laurel Jones, co-chairs of the Charles and Polly Ann Hicks Preserve, for coming on air and talking about this extremely important issue with me. Once again, I would like to thank the guys who make the miracle happen, the soothsayer of sound over here, Sam Davis, pushing the buttons, making the knobs work. The villain of video over there, Anthony Cook. He's sitting there smiling, very smug. I had a great time, you guys. And next week, I have the director of the Georgia Lawyers for the Arts coming on, and he's going to talk about intellectual property issues for startups.